The box was wrapped in gold paper, tied with a red ribbon. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd softened. That maybe my parents had finally decided to show up for me. But when I opened it, the smell hit first. Acrid, sharp, burnt fabric. Inside was my wedding dress. Charred, ruined. On top, a folded note in my mother's handwriting, "Let's see how you get married now." My hands didn't shake, my pulse didn't race. I just stared, the edges of my mouth curving into a smile so faint it would have scared anyone who knew me. They thought they'd broken me. They had no idea who I was marrying into. My parents were experts in cruelty disguised as parenting. They raised me on comparisons, always less than, always second to Anna. My success was invisible, hers was worshipped. Love? Conditional. Affection? Transactional. Approval? Impossible. Still, I'd hoped that marriage, my marriage, would be the day they finally stood beside me. Instead, they booked flights to Hawaii on my wedding day. They didn't just abandon me, they mocked me with a gift soaked in malice. That was the final lesson. I owed them nothing. The truth is, I'd seen their resentment building for years. Every promotion, every step forward in my life, my parents twisted into a threat. They whispered that I was too independent, too arrogant, too much. When I met Daniel, they dismissed him before they knew him. They called him ordinary, unworthy. They never bothered to learn his last name, never noticed the quiet weight behind it. Goldsmith, old money, generational empire, billionaire legacy. But I never flaunted it. I didn't marry Daniel for wealth. I married him for the quiet strength in his eyes, the way he stood beside me without wavering. My parents assumed I was marrying into weakness, and so they struck. They burned my dress, left for Hawaii, convinced my day would collapse without them. They forgot one thing. I don't collapse. I build. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I walked into the bedroom where Daniel's mother was waiting. She saw the box, saw the ashes, and her face hardened. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "we'll take care of this." And they did. Within hours, a custom gown arrived, flown in, hand-stitched, priceless. Tailored overnight by people who owed the goldsmith's favors that stretched across continents. While my parents sipped cocktails on Waikiki Beach, I was being fitted into a gown worth more than their entire house. I didn't need revenge in that moment. I just needed patience. The wedding was perfect, not because of the dress or the venue or the shimmering rings, but because I stood surrounded by people who chose me, who valued me, who didn't need to destroy me to feel powerful. Still, I knew what would sting my parents most. Not the ceremony itself, not my vows, but the image, the undeniable proof of what they'd underestimated and what they'd lost. So I waited, I posed, I smiled beneath chandeliers that cost more than my parents' yearly income. And the next morning, I posted the photographs. Not just me and Daniel, but me standing arm in arm with the Goldsmith family, the billionaires they had dismissed as ordinary, the in-laws who treated me like blood. The captions were simple, understated, family. And then the storm began. It started with calls, 1, then 5, then 50. By the end of the day, over 1,000 missed calls lit up my phone. My parents, my sister, numbers I hadn't seen in years. Voicemails piled in. My mother's voice, desperate, brittle. "Why didn't you tell us? We didn't know. We should have been there." My father's voice, angry, defensive. "You embarrassed us. You shut us out." No apology, no remorse for what they did. Just panic, just greed. Because suddenly, their discarded daughter wasn't a burden. She was access. And they had burned their bridge with their own hands. I didn't answer, not once. I let the silence ring louder than any words could. Sometimes revenge isn't fire. It isn't destruction. It's revelation. It's letting someone see, in brutal clarity, that they no longer matter. My parents wanted me broken, dependent, small. Instead, I stood taller than I ever had, backed by a family they could never touch. They tried to humiliate me with ashes. I buried them with silence. And as the calls kept pouring in, as their desperation curdled into rage, I poured myself a glass of champagne, scrolled through my wedding photos again, and smiled. Because they were right about one thing: I'll never get married without them, but not for the reason they think. I got married without them, and it was the best decision I ever made.